Okay, I'm going to call to order the Town of Andover special meeting for Thursday, June 12th at 7:02. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. um, One second. Okay, we'll go through public speak is next. Louise Goodwin,
I'm good. Thank you, Jeff.
Valerie Bruno,
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Joanne Ebert,
Well, clearly I'm here. I'm going to listen, of course, before I say too much because I want to see, I guess I want to know what the ultimate purpose and the end result wanted comes out of this. I've read everything. I understand. We all want to do things, as a member of the Board of Finance, we want to do things in the correct way and in the manner that they're supposed to. I guess I'm a little surprised because I think a lot of this was very transparent and openly said in meetings that I've attended where there's been slides talking about things. So I don't want to speak too much ahead of time. I thought it had been talked about when there was votes taken by town members. It was ultimately, whatever, I'll sit back and listen to the experts. But I mean, I thought the goal of the town, who all of the boards were involved in talking about it, was the purpose to create the AES account and then, of course, fund it, little by little. And to me, the perfect way, instead of a spending spree or things going to Staples and paper clips or things, that are needed, why not have this money go back into the board, into the AES fund? So I want to listen. I want to do things the right way, but it was pretty transparent and spoken about in multiple meetings across the year.
Kimberly Person.
I'm gonna listen for now. Thank you, Jeff.
Okay. So that was item 2, public speak, and now we're on to item 3, discussion and action on the draft audit report for the period ended June 30th, 2024, regarding the transfer of unexpended Board of Education appropriations to the AES Capital Fund. So just so everybody understands why I really am doing this is so that we start to do things correctly. So we have not, as a community, been doing everything in the most appropriate manner to effectively manage the town's resources. And I'll sit there and I'll tell you why this has to get voted on is because when you go through the charter, as I know Carol has, and Carol, you can speak to your sections that we'll discuss. There's certain roles that each group has, and I will try to explain them from a very common sense standpoint. The Board of Selectmen has to manage the town and evaluate all the aspects of the town. We have to take into account the school, we have to take into account the fire department, we have to take into account the library, we have to take into account all of the organizations within this town. And even though it's a small town, everybody needs to sit there and be heard. And we, as a group, as the Board of Selectmen, we have to balance all of those groups and do what is right for all of the groups. And what occurred related to this, while I understand why we're doing it, I do, not done correctly, because what occurred was money went, the school, and God bless the school, Joanne said it, the school sat there and didn't go out and overspend their money. They had an under budgeted amount, and that money would come back to the town. Technically, what it should do is come back to the town, go into the general fund, and from the general fund, we should have made a recommendation to move $350,000 into the AES fund to pay for the bathroom work. I totally get that. I'm not sure everybody in the town really got it. And I'm not sure that everyone in the town, had their say, because I hear a lot that, the Board of Selectmen is trying to overstep their authority. Well, in this case, we're not overstepping our authority. Our authority is to present to the Board of Finance a budget, and including the capital funds for the town, all of the assets of the community. The school building is a town asset, the town hall is a town asset, the community center is a town asset, the fire department is a town asset, the library is a town asset. The old library is a town asset, and even the asset we're tearing down, the old firehouse, is a town asset, and we have to balance all of them. So what happened was the Board of Education members went to the Board of Finance, and they sat there and said, we have an under budgeted amount we want to move into the AES Capital Fund. And everybody needs to understand the AES Capital Fund is a town account, not a Board of Education account. It is a town account. Those dollars are capital funds, just like every other capital fund that we have, like the road work capital fund, the bridge and culvert fund. It's a town fund that is used for specific purposes that we are trying to save and budget for. So I sit there with everybody and I just let you know that even putting that money there, it's still a town account, just not done correctly. And I want to make sure that moving forward, we do things in a correct manner and we get this voted on, and hopefully not hopefully, it will pass. I mean, it's not going to pass. And we do it correctly. That's it. That was all I was ever after. That's all I've been sitting there dealing with. And in my head, we need to sit there and outline everybody's responsibilities, because people are outsizing the role that they have within the community. And listen, the Board of Selectmen isn't the final authority on anything. The town meeting is, unless it's written into an ordinance and it's granted to the Board of Selectmen by charter, which all of this is governed by. The town meeting is the ultimate authority, because that's our form of government. So anyway, that's why I wanted to do this. So now let's go. Carol, I know you have issues related to the charter. Let's talk about the sections. We can bring them up.
Well, the only sections 806, C, and D.
Okay,
Okay.
so
So,
C and D, right? Well, so let's read them, right? So these are section 806, expenditures and accounting.
correct.
Okay. C, 1, when an agency excluding the Board of Education shall desire to transfer funds within its appropriation from the funds set apart for one purpose to another, such agency shall file a request with the town administrator. The town administrator shall examine the matter, and with the concurrence of the Board of Selectmen shall have the power to approve requests to a cumulative amount of $2,000 for any one department, office, or agency in any fiscal year. Do you want to keep going through all of those, or is your biggest issue
Well-
related to excluding the local Board of Education?
Excluding the local Board of Ed, and then the last sentence of section 2 that says the cumulative total of 10% of the agency's total budget for the fiscal year.
Correct. Okay.
Okay,
So let's just get to the biggest section, the biggest part of this that I will sit there and deal with you on. It's expenditures and accounting. It's transferences between expenditure line items. We are not talking about making a transfer between an expenditure line item. We're talking about making a transfer to a capital fund.
but it says from the funds set apart for one purpose to another.
Correct. Related to expenditures.
Expenditures.
That's an accounting term that, when you sit there and you deal with it, sure. And it would be what Eric and the Board of Selectmen do.
I'll be done.
So,
Okay, and the
so,
other question that I have when I was talking with Eric and Dennis and Bill DeRozier,
Mhm.
we did look at another tab in the budget with Eric,
Mhm.
where it was clearly shown that the Board of Finance was removing $100,000 that we would have been taxed on for
Mhm.
the upcoming fiscal year and instead put that $361,000 into the AES capital fund.
Yeah.
And it was also explained in a presentation. So it
I have
was
Eric.
part of the budget that we voted on, as
It was,
far as
it
I
was,
can see.
it was a presentation to the town capital budget that sat there and said, so a change of funding to AES capital fund for school infrastructure repairs to be funded from any AES surplus. I don't know,
Correct.
from any AES stuff. Okay, so
Any,
yeah, 100,000 K, which is what the Board of Selectmen was putting in that fund, because before we knew the surplus, right? We put that in there, right? Now funded from AES surplus 361, recently added to the AES capital fund from prior budget surplus. So in essence, the Board of Finance was informing the community that they made a change to the last year's budget without anyone voting on it. They made a global change, and yes, Carol, did they put it there? And did different people within the group know that it was done? But to put it up in a presentation or to put it on a blackboard is different from having someone vote on that being moved.
but they reduced the 100,000 that we were going to be taxed on for this upcoming fiscal year, starting July 1, 25.
Correct. And the only thing that we voted on at the budget meeting, when it was done, was the reduction of the $100,000. Because that was the budget the Board of Selectmen presented to the Board of Finance. And then the Board of Finance sat there and reduced the budget recommendation that we made by $100,000. Why? Because at their meeting, they voted to sit there and move money. And listen, this goes into my whole issue, like that transaction was done simply by the Board of Finance without understanding or even sitting there and evaluating the overall total needs of the community. And I sit there and this moves forward. This is something for me moving forward, because to me, this is common sense. There are certain things that have to be done and have to be done properly. We all have to work together. There is no doubt about it that we have to work together better, but we also have to understand what our roles are and not our roles. So in this case, Carol, I'll disagree with you in that putting it up in a presentation and putting it there and saying a change to the AS Capital Fund for the school was done, and nobody in the town meeting voted on that. They knew that the Board of Education did it. They didn't vote on it.
It was also in a tab that Eric had on his desktop computer showing me the transfers into the different funds. So
Okay, so Eric is on the phone, and I just have to ask him. Eric, was that related to the prior year, the way that the prior year financial statements were done? How was that done? What is Carol referring to?
So when the Board of Selectmen was going through their budget process, one of the documents that I gave you was a list of all the capital funds that the town had, what the sources of revenue for them, and what the expected expenses of in that year. After the Board of Finance made the decision to transfer in the money from the Board of Education, and at the same time made a motion to reduce the amount being funded into that capital fund from the budget process by $100,000. I updated that spreadsheet. The Board of Finance did not share that spreadsheet, or most of the capital summary that they have with the public at the budget meeting. They just didn't.
Okay.
But yes, the Board of Finance certainly had a document listing all the funding for all the capital funds, what amounts were in each fund, and what the funding sources were. That's what Carol's referring to.
and there are quite a few other funds on that tab of the spreadsheet listed that
They
I
would-
don't know if
they would
they're
all be-
on what we voted on. that's all I'm
We
saying.
never, yeah, but we never vote on any of those, Carol. Those are all balance sheet accounts for the town. So the funds end up being a balance sheet item that sits there and says, we have this much in cash in the general fund, and then the general fund is broken down to these funds, and some of these funds actually have their own bank account. It's a balance sheet item. You wouldn't vote on that.
But if funds are being added to it, it should be shown. The people should be able to see what they're
Yeah.
being taxed on and the money
Correct.
that's being added in there. And
Mm.
I understand what you're saying, and we do have to do things correctly. But this is done. Are we going to go back and look at everything that was incorrectly done? You know, things that were signed off, expenditures that were made.
Well, actually,
I mean,
we
this is done.
we should be doing this.
So you're saying that we should go in and start reviewing everything and anything that wasn't.
It's not our job to review that. That's what the Board of Finance should be doing, Carol. They
Okay,
should
but
have done all of this.
who came up with this? And why is this coming up? Something with a fiscal year ending June 30 of 2024. The
Mhm.
audit for that year was just handed out as a draft audit. Now,
Yeah.
if somebody told me the final audit is there, I don't know. I haven't seen that yet. But I just think it's something Board of Finance did it. Whether it's correct or not is still gray to me.
That's the point.
And if they would have done it, if it was for fiscal year ending June 30, 2025, and they
Mhm.
came right now and asked for that money to be transferred, they would be well within their right doing that. If the Board of Finance approves it and it goes to a town budget meeting.
Correct. And
Correct?
what
So
should have happened,
had-
listen, Carol, what should have happened is that number should have been on this year's budget, and there should have been money moved from the general fund to cover those dollars. That's exactly how it should have happened.
Now, are you saying
Not a vote, sorry, Ann, not a vote of 6-0 to affect the prior fiscal year budget. Because no one, you can't tell me that anyone at the town meeting voted on that. Go ahead, Ann.
Well, we didn't have a lot of votes at the town meeting, but we had the referendum. And the town approved the budget as it is for next year, for 25 to 26. Are you saying you want to take this money out of the 23, 24 budget year? This was already done, and you're saying you want to change that? Or are you just saying you want to change it for the future?
No, I want to approve it so that in essence, it was done correctly. Because right now, in my mind, that vote is not appropriate. It wasn't, the Board of Finance did not have the authority to sit there and move those funds to a capital fund. So in essence, what happened was the Board of Education went to the Board of Finance, said, we have an under budgeted amount. We'd like it moved to the AAS Capital Fund. The Board of Finance took a vote, only the Board of
Mhm.
Finance, right? Took a vote and sat there and said, okay, we're going to move all this money into the AAS Capital Fund for sole use on the building of this and on the school building, right? Understanding and that the asset is a town asset. That bathroom needs to be fixed. I'm okay with this, just not done right. So,
Well, it's been done, been audited. We can't change the past. There's a lot of things you might say haven't been done right. It's true, but you're not going to be changing those. The only thing we can do is for the future now.
the one thing that we can do is we can make sure that our audit is correct. Because, being
This audit is correct.
again, the auditor was going with information that was presented to him by the town administrator and the Board of Finance. And he
Mhm.
believes they acted under the proper authority to do it.
Mhm.
I'm in my mind telling you that that's incorrect. Okay, so now what happens if we sit there and we don't go to town meeting, we don't approve it, and we go to the auditor, right? What's the auditor gonna potentially do? He's gonna make a correction to his audit.
And we're gonna have a finding in the audit, like,
We're gonna have a change, Carol. It's gonna move the money from the AES capital fund to the general fund.
I don't think so. You've got the
So-
same auditor.
You can believe that. And it's okay. That's why we're here. That's why
so
we're,
you're telling us that the auditor,
Yeah.
if he looks and deems that this was incorrectly done,
Yeah.
he's just going to take that money and transfer it back into the general fund, and an auditor has the authority to do that.
he has to determine whether those entries are done correctly.
Okay, But-
Valerie, hold on for 1 second, will you? I get your hands up. I don't like hands up in meetings. I mean, go. So,
okay, so the auditor can transfer money from
no,
that
the
account
auditor,
back?
the auditor doesn't transfer anything. The auditor
But the
takes
auditor-
transactions and evaluates the transactions, whether they're done correctly or not done correctly.
Okay, and then that would be a finding in our audit.
He would go back to the treasurer and say, make the entry correctly. Let's sit there and say we went and we said, that is not done. That is not done with the appropriate authority, right? Not done with the appropriate authority. And you go through it. I mean, things have to be done with the appropriate authority. There's nothing anyone wants to sit there and show me. I said it at the board, at the town meeting that I was at. I'm like, who voted on this? Because no one voted on it. The town meeting didn't vote on it. It didn't go from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance to get voted on, and that's okay. I just ask who voted on it, because the Board of Selectmen is not the final end all be all on something like this. Had to be in front of the town meeting and get voted on. So Valerie, go ahead, because I know you want to speak on behalf of the Board of Education.
No, actually, it's not on behalf of the Board of Education. I just feel right now like that you're offering some misinformation here to the general public, respectfully, Mr. McGuire. We have the same auditor as you. They audit the Board of Education and the town every single year. So I do feel like the information that you are currently giving to the public is this auditor didn't know. This auditor doesn't know, and oops, there's a mistake, and this auditor just has misinformation. And respectfully, and I'm not trying to be confrontational, but we have a good auditor who has done right by this town on my side and your side. And I feel like you're trying to make the general public feel that this audit was done wrong, and it was not. The auditor has all, excuse me, the auditor has all of the information, every one of the accounts, every transaction, and it was done, and it went through, and our audit does not have a finding for something being wrong for that. So respectfully, I understand that you don't like the way it was done between the Board of Education. And again, at the start of this, Mr. McGuire, you said the Board of Selectmen oversees the fire department, the library, the education. They do not oversee. We have a Board of Education. And if you look at all of the state statutes, the Board of Education oversees education. And so
Do you own the building, Valerie? Because let's go. Do you own the building? Does the Board of Education own the building?
The Board of Education oversees that building by state statute.
Do you own the building?
Neither do you. The town of
Yes, we
Andover.
do. The town of Andover
The
owns the
Board of
building.
Selectmen does not own the building. The town of Andover does. And there is a
Valerie,
Board of
the Board of-
Education. So
the Board of
respectfully, I
Selectmen-
just wanted to intervene to say we all have the same auditor. The auditor knows year after year what goes on.
He does. He does. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Valerie. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, the auditor doesn't read the charter every single activity that goes on. And so Carol, like you're a charter person. Just saying. If you go back to the auditor and you sit there and say, by charter, this was not done correctly, then the auditor has to make a decision as to what he's going to do. My recommendation is to go to a town meeting and get it approved and move on. That's it.
To
So
get what approved.
to get the transfer properly approved. I am not sitting there saying take the money away. Please understand that. I am saying do it correctly. And
What I can see-
just so happens, according to the superintendent, I happen to be a CPA. I happen to sit there and have done audits before and do those types of things. And I'm telling you, in an audit like this, you either follow the charter, and I know that our auditor is a very good auditor, but he didn't read our charter. He was just told that this is what the Board of Finance wanted to do with their number. Okay, I'm coming back and I'm telling you the Board of Finance didn't have the authority to do it. You can sit there and say, let's not have a meeting and we'll move forward, right? I will tell you, moving forward, we are going to change. Everybody's got to get together and say, these are the rules. This is how it is. The superintendent likes to sit there and say that they have total authority of that building. Do you know that that building is a town building? The Board of Selectmen is the legislative authority related to the town of Andover. And guess what? We 5 members have a responsibility to that building, just like every other building, just like every other road and every other culvert in this town. Our responsibility.
But the
Physical assets,
school
not
board,
internally, not internal, Ann, not internal, not maintenance. I'm not talking maintenance. I'm not talking cleaning. I'm not talking any of that. That's all Board of Education capital improvements, and the building in total are town assets. So and listen, we don't have to waste any more time. I've said my piece. It's not done correctly. Everybody, we can either have a town meeting or you guys can vote no to not have a town meeting. We vote no to not have a town meeting. In my mind, the town meeting did not vote to approve that transfer. So, we good?
Jeff, I have a couple questions, just a couple comments.
Sure.
First is the name of the AAS fund. It should not be the AAS capital fund. It should be the AAS school fund, just like it has the building fund and we have the fire truck fund. The word capital should be taken out of there, because if we use this capital money to fix a bathroom, fixing a bathroom is an expense. It is not a capital expenditure. As a CPA, you know what a capital versus an expense is. An expense is a repair or a replacement. Capital is like putting the solar panels on. That's adding value to a structure or a building. If we call this a capital fund and we want to fix the bathroom, we're kind of tying our hands here, because we really need to change that and make it the AES school building fund. Number 2, I know when we built the community center, we ended up with all those 2 payments of ARPA funds. We did a similar thing. We put that in the budget and we put it as a line item, and it was approved at town meeting, and the community center was built. That is very similar to what we did here, because it was actually a capital improvement to the town. That is a capital expense. That's adding value to this. And third, I mean, I went through Eric's slides that were there, and we followed a similar process when we did that. And unless the auditor is screaming and says, you guys got to fix this, I mean, I'm kind of torn right now, like what to do, because I really don't think. I think everybody had a chance to look at we voted for it at town meeting, whether we're going to send it to referendum or not. And it was clearly in there that we were going to take that money and move it into the AES fund. I mean, I saw it. I knew we were taking $100,000 out from taxation. So, I'm torn on this, because I get what you're saying, but on the other hand, I feel like, we followed the same process that we followed with the community center funds. And that was a significantly 3 times the amount of money that we're talking here. So if we're going to go back and do this, are we going to go back and fix all these other things that we've kind of had a little bit of oversight on? But because I think we did the community center right. I actually think we were correct in the way we did that. And I mean, look, you're right. The bathrooms need to be fixed, and it's an expense. But I would like to see the name of that fund renamed to AES Building Fund, just like all our other funds, like fire truck. We don't have a fire truck capital fund. It's a fire truck fund. That's the only one. That's the only one I know of. That's the only one I know of now that says capital in it that I'm aware of. So we
Listen, I
should
don't
probably
care.
name it because, look, fixing those bathrooms is not a capital investment. That's a repair. That's a
I
repair.
would sit there and go, Jeff, it's the same issue as the roof.
That's a repair.
The
That's a
roof is,
repair.
it's, the roof.
No,
Well,
you
you
were
have a,
adding.
you have a whole, I have a different view of capital because
Look,
I
I've been
look at-
doing
I
I've
look
been
at
doing
depreciation.
facilities for 20
Yeah.
something years, and I know the difference between capital expenditures and expense. And this
Well,
is an expense. It's not a capital expenditure.
I would sit
You're
there.
not adding any value to the building. You're correcting something that was already there. You're doing a repair. It's a repair.
Can I just ask a question? Because this wasn't an audit finding. So how did this come about? Why are we here talking about this today? Because I don't think it was the Board of Finance. They
No,
took
it was
the vote
me.
to transfer.
Yes, it's me. I brought this up because it's the vote which was taken by the Board of Finance and it's not a valid vote as far as I'm concerned.
And you think that we have the right to overturn something that the Board of Finance did?
If it's incorrect, yeah. I mean, and I'm not even telling you, Carol, that
I
it's the
think-
Board of Selectmen's vote. It's not the Board of Selectmen's vote.
I understand that, but we would have to be overturning their vote and
Okay.
then forcing it to go to
Well,
a
we would
town.
be overturning the town, Carol, we'd be overturning the town meeting because we took this to the town meeting. And
Right, we did
and the
take
que-
it
and
to
the-
the town
in
meeting,
the,
so.
in the
Be
quote,
overturning
Jeff,
the
it
vote.
was
If you guys-
the
if you
town meeting
guys-
is the governing body.
If you guys believe that putting this up on a PowerPoint line and sitting there saying that this is what occurred for the prior fiscal audit is a town meeting vote, then that is what your decision is.
Yeah, but Jeff, what is the difference between this and what we did with the community center? What is
Yeah.
the difference?
What's the difference?
I would sit there and go, Jeff, when we sat there and did that, right? I would sit there and I can't tell you because I didn't go backwards to sit there and look at it. I would ask you, was it only done as a presentation point that we talked
Yeah.
about it at the town?
Yes, it was. I remember
just
because
a
a lot of people
presentation.
asked me
Yes.
why it wasn't brought to town meeting. And I said, well, the Board of Selectmen had the purview. We did at that point, had the purview to expend that money.
Mhm.
And we brought that to the town meeting and we said we wanted to use those funds for the community center and we did.
But
And the
did
town
we
at that
vote-
time could have
did we
ejected.
vote- Did we vote on that at all?
No.
We as a board?
No, I know
As a
we as a board did, but I'm asking you, did we ever bring it to the town meeting at all?
Yes, we
say,
did. It
"Yeah,
was on the
this is a line
slideshow.
item"?
Yes, yes.
But you're just saying it was on the slideshow.
Yeah, but on the other thing that at the town
But we
meeting,
didn't vote.
anybody can vote to reduce an expense or a line item. And that was a line item. We had a line item to spend for the community center.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Was it on a line item for the way that our charter our charter says that like it changed, like you're supposed to have 5 line items. You're supposed to have 5 columns for each budget. So for the Board of Education budget, for the town budget, 5 lines, all the budget, like the prior year number, the over budget, the under budget, all that good stuff is supposed to be in there. And what I'm asking you, Jeff, is when we did that, did we put the ARPA funding in and then the ARPA funding out on the budget document that the town representatives got? The
That
town,
was on the power. It was on, I cannot speak to that, but I can guarantee that it was on the PowerPoint
oh,
presentation.
I know it's on the
Just-
PowerPoint.
that.
I know that
That's where-
I know that we did it, but I'm asking, was it?
That would
Listen,
be
we
a
could-
question,
we
that would
could
be a
have done
question
it
for Eric.
incorrectly.
That would be a question for Eric and the Board of Finance.
We could have done it incorrectly. I'm not debating that,
Mhm.
but I know we did this one
I
incorrectly.
think,
Because at the time, I don't think we had received the second payment yet.
No, but we never spent, I mean, we didn't spend the money until we had all of the money and.
Mm.
you
But
know,
we never took it to a town meeting to let the town decide what they want to spend the ARPA funds on. We never did.
Because the Board of Selectmen was the key player in this, and they're the ones that decided where the money went.
No, but
but the
that's not right,
townspeople
Scott.
had no say.
Yeah, that's not right.
It wasn't the townspeople say, it was the
It
Board of
wasn't-
Selectmen's say.
It wasn't tax dollars like this, but Scott, if we did that incorrectly, we did it incorrectly.
Well,
I
yeah,
will-
it actually was tax dollars that was returned to us or borrowed.
Well, it's
It
federal
didn't
money.
come out of the
Well,
sky.
Yeah, and it
Are
should have
we
been
gonna
voted.
have a vote tonight or not? I want to get moving.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we set a date for a town meeting to vote on the transfer of the funds from the AES over budget to the AES building fund. I'll go with Jeff Murray's terminology.
I'll second that, Jim.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
And Jeff, I'm going to abstain because I don't see that there's any evidence either way to make a decision on this.
Okay, that's all right. My goal is to sit there and move forward and do things correctly. I just don't think we did it correctly. So, all right. We're now past our item, so we're moving on to public speak. I do not know the item for that. Anybody want to help me on the agenda?
Jeff, I have a question about this. How's this going to be done next year?
Oh, listen, I had already talked to Mark Brinker that we need
How
to
is this going to be done next year? Jeff Murray, what's your opinion on what do we do next year?
Well, I think we need to figure out, we need to make these funds that they're addressed correctly and for the
And
right
what are you
purposes.
going to do with the under expenditures?
We're gonna actually put them in the budget as line. I would make sure that they're in there on budget line items and make sure that if there's an issue, like Jeff's saying, that the townspeople aren't clear with the funds, then we put it in the budget and we tell people that, look, we're getting these school funds returned, but we're moving it to this fund because there's needed improvements that need to happen. Instead of increasing taxes in the future to make these repairs, we're gonna use this money that we have now to make these needed expenses.
No, it's not going to be returned to the town. You're saying again next year?
That could be up to the town to decide. I mean, this was presented at a town meeting. Somebody could have made a motion to take that $300 and some thousand and put it back in the
That
general
was
fund.
never brought up. Mark Brinker went over that whole slide.
That's inaccurate because it wasn't in this year's budget. That's my point. We're missing the whole point of this. It is a prior year budget transaction done. Nobody but the Board of Finance members voted on this.
It was a transfer. It was a budget funds transfer.
Can't do it like that. It's not like an expenditure and an expenditure line. This is
Well, yes, well, that was my point, Jeff. If you're using this for expense repairs, yes, it's a legitimate transfer.
It's not. It was moved and I'm sorry, Jeff, the terminology will work on what we have to get to, but it was moved to a capital fund. It was
But
not.
as a CPA,
It was not moved to an expenditure line item. And Jeff, this goes back into your skill, and this is where you need to sit there and come and bring forth the best thing for the community. Because listen, we're going to sit there and undertake a bathroom repair, which the terminology you want to go. Where's the building committee on that? Where's the group of people sitting there and evaluating how it gets done and where it gets done and why, when it gets done? You got to help marshal
They
that
do have a
forward.
committee that's just forming now to do
And
that.
I hope they bring in people like Adrian and Bob Hamburger and Jeff Murray and people who understand that type of work. And because I'm a CPA, I'm not that right person. Bring in Rick Wilson, bring in a lot of people from the community that have skills. And because that needs to happen, just like we did when we did the roof. We brought in a building committee and we got it done. And those are the things that we have to outline and say, this is how we expect things to happen, because it's got to be the same way the budgets get presented. We have to do a better job to sit there and say, this is a requirement of how the budgets get presented. And you've got to follow along this way to sit there and make sure that everybody in the community gets all the right information. So anyway, we're moving on to item.
Like I said, Jeff, I'm not disagreeing with you. I just don't have enough information either way to make a decision.
Jeff, well, I sit there and
made
go,
a decision, Jeff,
you
just
made a
by doing
decision.
what you
That's
did.
okay. And that's okay. And listen, I knew that we would sit there and be split on this issue, but it doesn't mean that I cannot bring it forth to the community to say we need to do it right, because we did not do this right. And that's okay. So public speak, we're going to move on to Luis Goodwin.
I commend you, First Selectman Jeff McGuire, for determining the mistake in the budget process and wanting to correct it to follow the town charter. We are lucky to have you.
Joanne Hebert.
So I also am glad that if there was a mistake made in a process, that it was brought forward in a, in a forum where everybody can understand. I do have several concerns though. Um, I want to understand, and I will make myself educated on that, that I thought that the funds were, they're like bank accounts and they accumulate every year. We are allowed to budget, you as the Board of Selectmen, budget them to the extent that you want to every year, if you're putting the budget together to send to the Board of Finance. So I guess I'm a little confused. I totally understand that it was surplus money from last year, fiscal year, 23, 24 of the 360,000. It wasn't really, I didn't think being, and I will educate myself, being put back in a budget per se. It was being put back in a fund that accumulates. So just like the general fund accumulates, because I'm all for taking surplus funds and, you know, uh, bringing down the town's taxation. So I will educate myself there. What I am very afraid of with this whole process, as someone that goes to a lot of meetings of all of the boards and have watched the little baby steps come where there's been a trust from the Board of Ed through everybody trying to work together who has, given a lot of their time and effort and, tried to make inroads with that. I'm afraid this is going to do the opposite for them because it's yet another thing where they, in good faith, had given back the $100,000 because they were forthright with their surplus. I will mark my words here. I don't think anyone has to worry, Mr. Person, about and this is just from watching everybody, getting to know everyone's personalities, being present, being outspoken. I don't think there's going to be a surplus ever again because there's not going to be any trust anymore. So I don't think this will be a problem. We'll be watching budgets that are put forth be spent. This is why I was so outspoken about this agreement and getting the unspent money back every year to go to AAS for these things so that they don't spend it on other things because there was that trust. So that's what I'm afraid of for the town right now. But I also want to do things the right way, and here we are. So thank you.
Valerie Bruno.
Thank you. Jeff Murray, thank you for pointing out that when we say mistake, it was mistakes between the boards because the $1 million for the senior center was exactly the same process that was followed. So of course, the Board of Finance would never consider a different method if that was the method that had already been used and set a precedent. In terms of whether or not the Board of Education or myself as the superintendent would ever just decide that there would be no surplus, if there truly was, I really don't want the general public to think that there would be no let's buy extra pencils. That's silly. We did try in 23 to utilize the funds that we had available before the end of the fiscal year to do the driveway. And that was prior to it then being unexpended funds. And that was shot down. That was shot down by the town side. And they said, nope, even though that's your money, and even though it's prior to the end of the fiscal year, and even though it's an expenditure you believe that you have, the answer is no. And so that's kind of where the difficulty's been since then. So I assure the general public that the Board of Education and myself would never take unexpended funds and not use them wisely. So thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that. But if there is unexpended funds at the end of the year, that they would absolutely, if there is nothing that needs to be done, go back to the town. But I do believe that the Board of Finance does have the authority. So I think moving forward, we definitely need to have roles clearly established for all three boards. Thank you.
Kimberly Person.
Nothing right now. Thank you, Jeff.
Liz Lokech.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to say. I've been on vacation and kind of came into this meeting late, and I appreciate the conversation about doing things the right way and hope that we can fix the process going forward, so that it's correct. The one thing I will say though is the money that is, as far as I'm concerned, the money that's going into the AES capital slash building fund, whatever we're going to call it still remains within the town's control and it will be spent as needed. I believe that to be true, and if I'm not correct in that, I'd like to know that too. So it would be requested by the school as it was needed. So if I'm incorrect in that, I'd like for someone to correct me. But thank you guys for all you do, and I know this is a tough one.
Okay. Is there anything else for anybody that I missed? Did I miss anybody?
Yeah, we can just, yeah, for Liz's benefit, yes, they would have to come back and request those funds. It would have to be approved.
Okay, and just as a side thing, because I was I was texting Eric to make sure I understood this. Eric actually put Jeff, the definition of a capital purchase and capital equipment and projects, as the definition goes, 131. Capital purchases, equipment and projects with an estimated cost of $15,000 or more, or estimated annual maintenance or leasing costs of $5,000 or more.
That's not entirely true.
I think I think you have it in your own.
All right, well, Jeff, if you, I just want to say for just discussion, you have a business and your septic tank goes in your business in your domicile or your business, and you have to repair that. It costs you $50,000 to replace your septic system. You can't claim that on your taxes as a capital investment, but if you go out and buy $100,000 delivery truck, you can depreciate that over 10 years as a depreciable item, correct?
Yeah, and as a landlord and as a owning property, when I sit there and I do something like the roof or,
Mhm.
would I sit there and deduct the entire bathroom? Yeah, but to do it technically correct and actually have, the auditor sit there and go at it, you're probably going to depreciate the bathroom over 15 years.
Yeah, because that's the useful life of the
Correct.
bathroom. But
So it's a
and so
capital
we're in
asset.
a municipality, but it's a little different. But the
Not
rules
gonna
that
be really.
how we purchase and depreciate things are pretty similar.
And the real issue, Jeff, to be really honest, is how you sit there and evaluate projects. Because if you sit there and you are doing something, we have to define this. This
Yeah,
has to
like the
get
pickleball
defined.
courts in the playground, those are absolutely capital
No, no,
because you're
no, no,
improving
no.
a property.
You're different. You're
Yeah, but
different.
no,
If
that's
you're
the
sitting there,
definition.
you're sitting there having a building that is a town building, and we're only talking about the school because all the other buildings, it's part of it falls under the town purchasing policy. We are going down a real slippery slope if you sit there and you don't sit there and control that building. Just telling you. It's like thinking about what Valerie sat there and said in her public speak. And this is my public speak. She sat there and said about the parking lot and the money that was going to be spent on the parking lot. If we allow money to be spent like that and it's not approved in a manner, it doesn't go in front of a building committee, it doesn't go in front of capital improvement, doesn't get in front of the town administrator, and we do these things and they're not done correctly, then we're going to sit there and just be throwing money away. It's
Oh,
what we
Jeff,
did
I
10 years ago. It's what we did.
100% agree there. I 100% agree with you there.
What we did 10 years ago with the prior administrations.
Yeah.
We threw money away.
Yeah, I agree. I
We
agree.
paved Cone Road and it wasn't done correctly. And you can't have that stuff. That's why, listen, that's why we went to a town administrator form of government, to have a way, to have that position in there, to have somebody who's caring about the whole town and all of the assets of the town. And this is not to sit there, and I'm not saying anything about the Board of Education. They do a great job educating the children. What I am saying is all of our groups have to do their jobs in an appropriate way to make the town run as well as it possibly can. Because it's not reality. We have to do like the Board of Finance. has to do its job across everything. It has to evaluate the expenditures from the prior year, has to ask tough questions. The Board of Finance's real goal is to set an upper level of spending for the community. That includes the Board of Education, that includes the town, you can't do anything with RAM, but you have to be able to fund all of your expenses, annual expenses, through taxation, or we pull it out of our fund balances. But everybody's got to do their job right. So the Board of Finance has to do its job right. The Board of Selectmen has to do its job right. And the Board of Education has to do its job right. And we all have to work together. Because if we don't work together, we will continue to go down these roads and we'll continue to have bigger arguments. And I'm just telling you, bigger arguments. And those are things that I want to avoid at all costs from, I don't have time, I don't have the energy, I don't want to fight, but I'm just telling you, bigger arguments and we don't need it. So anyway, anybody else I missed? Dennis O'Brien, you didn't say a word.
You want me
tonight.
to say something? I say amen to everything you just said. I think that this town has the capability, the talent on its boards and commissions and staff and whatnot to do really great. And we are doing very good, but I think you're right. We need to do things correctly and we need to do things in cooperation. We need to work together. And you just stated what the roles are of the three boards, basically the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and certainly the Board of Education. And I think we can do that. And I think this could be a good jumping off point to move farther into that direction than we have for a while here in this town. We had a meeting the other day with the governor, with the Board of Selectmen. I was really proud to be there. And I know the governor was very much impressed with our Board of Selectmen because he told my wife that he was. He had a great time with us here, and we are, we're a great town. I almost wish I lived there, but I'm not about to relocate. But anyway, I thought this was a good meeting. I thought there was disagreement, but it was civilized, and it was the discussion was intelligent, and I think we all know that we really need to work harder to work together in a way that makes sense. And I think you stated that at the end, Jeff, and I hope we can do that in the future. Thank you.
Okay,
And
I'll sit there.
I just say one last thing.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
agree that things have to be done correctly. And in the future, we need to do that. And I think that the efforts creating that tri board was one that was moving towards that. And I understand whatever policy was set up there, but I think that if we have that tri board, we have the understanding, there's a policy there, so it's very clear to everyone. I just think I think it's hard to step on the toes of an elected Board of Finance that made this decision, 6 votes. And again, I think everything has to be made more clear. We have to have that tri-board policy and have an understanding between all 3 boards, and we all 3 have to start working together.
Yeah, and
Okay,
and to Carol's point, if the Board of Finance meets next time and they decided they did this incorrectly and they want to have a town meeting, then that's in their purview, correct?
I believe so, but that Dennis is the expert on
again,
that.
they'd have to come to the Board of Selectmen to schedule the meeting. That's what I was trying to do. Whatever, that we're done. One last thing. Thank you, everybody, for going. Dennis said something about the Board of Selectmen, about the governor being impressed with the Board of Selectmen. While the governor may have been impressed by the Board of Selectmen, but be real honest, the governor was impressed by the town administrator. So I'm just letting you all know the town administrator was very articulate in the one of the primary issues the state has going on is housing and housing starts and low income housing. And Eric has done a tremendous amount of research to assist the planning and zoning board and to deal with CROG and all of the groups that he participates in. So I don't want you to think that I was traveling on business. I wasn't even there. I know Carol was there. I know Jeff Murray asked some
And-
good questions. I know Scott was there, but
And
I
Jeff Murray.
Yeah,
brought up
Jeff,
that
I
housing
was the
bill.
one that started the conversation.
Murray.
about the
Jeff
housing.
Murray
Yes.
started the conversation and Eric filled in all the gaps.
Yep.
And the governor was, as Dennis said, and I met with Dennis and I spoke to his wife and the governor was very impressed. So, and
Item 5,
item 5, I make a motion to adjourn.
second,
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
good night.
Good night.